The rain had turned the streets of Portland into a watercolor smear. Gray skies bleeding into the gutters. When Lucy stepped off the curb without looking and nearly collided with the truck splashing by, her heart slammed against her ribs. Not from the near miss, but from the hollow ache that had followed her for months, whispering that one wrong step might not be so bad. She straightened her hoodie, wiped the mist from her face, and pushed open the door to the cozy brick building on Northwest 23rd, where the sign above read Haven Wellness Collective in looping gold letters. Her last grasp at pulling herself back from the edge. Inside, the air smelled of chamomile tea and fresh pages from the self-help books stacked on every surface. Lucy scanned the waiting room, her boots leaving faint wet prints on the reclaimed wood floor. A few other clients thumbed through magazines or stared at their phones, but her eyes locked on the woman behind the reception desk, who glanced up with a smile that cut through the damp chill like a rare break in the clouds. That was Lydia Morales, the life coach everyone raved about in the anonymous reviews on Yelp. The one whose calm voice promised to untangle the knots life tied in your gut. Lucy had booked the session on a whim. After scrolling through her feed late one night, wine glass in hand, wondering if anyone could help her remember what it felt like to want tomorrow. Lydia waved her over, her dark curls catching the light from the overhead pendant lamps. Up close, she was even more striking, her brown eyes holding a depth that made Lucy feel seen, not just glanced at. Lucy Harper? Right on time. Come on back. I've got your tea steeping. Her voice was smooth, laced with that Pacific Northwest warmth, the kind that made you think of evergreens after a storm. They settled into the office, a sunlit nook overlooking a courtyard of ferns and fairy lights strung between potted asters. Lydia's space felt lived in. Not sterile, a worn leather armchair for clients, a desk cluttered with crystals, journals, and a half-eaten almond croissant, photos of hikes in the Cascades pinned to a corkboard. So, Lydia started, crossing her legs in those slim black trousers that hugged her frame just right. Tell me what brought you here today. No rush. Just whatever feels true. Lucy hesitated, fingers twisting the hem of her tank top beneath the hoodie. How do you sum up the unraveling? The girlfriend who left her for a barista with better playlists. The freelance graphic design gigs drying up in the post-pandemic slump. The nights staring at the ceiling fan in her cramped Alberta Arts District apartment. Convinced she was fading into irrelevance at 28. I guess. I feel stuck, she finally said, voice cracking like thin ice. Like I'm waiting for permission to move. But no one's giving it. Lydia nodded. No judgment in her gaze. Just that steady anchor. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. The sleeves of her navy shirt rolled up to reveal a delicate tattoo of a compass rose on her forearm. Stuck is a signal, Lucy. It means something inside you is ready to shift. But it's scary as hell. What's one thing that's keeping you there? The question hung, simple yet piercing. And Lucy found herself spilling it all, the betrayal of Jess's goodbye text. The way her sketches gathered dust on her tablet. The loneliness that wrapped around her like fog off the Willamette River. Lydia listened, interjecting with gentle probes, her pen scratching notes on a moleskin pad. But her eyes never left Lucy's face. By the end of the hour, something had loosened in Lucy's chest. A knot she hadn't named. Lydia walked her to the door, handing over a card with her personal number scrawled on the back. Text me if the stuck feeling creeps back. We're in this together now. Lucy stepped out into the drizzle, the city humming around her with the clatter of streetcars and the distant call of a barista hawking oat milk lattes. For the first time in weeks, the rain felt cleansing, not drowning. She didn't text that night, but the card burned a hole in her pocket, a quiet promise of more. The next session came a week later, under a sky finally cracking open to blue. Lucy arrived early, fidgeting with her phone, replaying their last talk in her head. Lydia greeted her with a hug, brief but warm, the scent of her vanilla body lotion lingering. You look lighter already, she said. And Lucy blushed, ducking her head. They dove deeper this time, mapping out Lucy's stuck points on a shared whiteboard, fear of failure in jagged red marker, isolation in swirling blue. Lydia shared a sliver of her own story. How she'd moved from a chaotic family in East LA to Portland 5 years ago, chasing stability after her own heartbreak with a woman who couldn't commit. Guidance isn't a straight line, she said, erasing a stray mark. It's a meander. Like the river out there. You learn the bends by wading in. As weeks blurred into a rhythm, their sessions stretched beyond the clock. Coffee after at Tin Shed Garden Cafe, where Lucy sketched logos on napkins while Lydia talked about her volunteer shifts at the local LGBTQ center. Lucy opened up about her coming out in a conservative Boise suburb, the relief of landing in Portland's rainbow-draped streets during Pride. Lydia laughed at her stories, a rich sound that made Lucy's stomach flip, and shared her love for indie folk records spinning on her vintage turntable. One evening, as they wandered the Saturday market under strings of chili pepper lights, Lucy caught Lydia watching her with something softer than professional care, a gaze that lingered on the curve of her neck when she laughed. The attraction simmered, unspoken but electric. Lucy found excuses to text, a funny meme about therapy cats, a photo of her first completed client pitch after Lydia's pep talk. Lydia responded with voice notes, her tone dropping low and intimate, like sharing secrets over midnight calls. "You're braver than you know, Luce," she'd say, and the nickname sent sparks down Lucy's spine. But boundaries blurred. During a session on vulnerability, Lydia's hand brushed Lucy's knee as she passed a tissue after a tearful breakthrough. The touch lingered a beat too long, eyes meeting in the charged silence. "I'm here," Lydia whispered, and Lucy wondered if she meant more than words. Fall deepened, leaves carpeting the Pearl District sidewalks in crimson and gold. Lucy's life steadied, a steady gig designing for a queer-owned bookstore. Tentative dates with apps that fizzled. But her thoughts circled back to Lydia. One night, after a particularly raw session about Jess's ghost, they ended up at Lydia's apartment in the Hawthorne neighborhood, a loft with exposed brick and shelves groaning under plants and poetry collections. Lydia poured red wine from a box, the kind you laugh about, and they sprawled on the couch, knees touching. "What if the guidance I need isn't just about moving forward?" Lucy asked, voice barely above the hum of the fridge. Lydia set her glass down, turning fully, her curls framing a face flushed with wine and want. The kiss happened like a dam breaking. Slow at first, Lydia's lips tentative against Lucy's, tasting of Merlot and hesitation. Then deeper, hands tangling in hair, breaths mingling in the lamplight. It was confession without words, Lydia pulling back only to murmur, "This is more than I planned," her fingers tracing Lucy's jaw. They tumbled into it, clothes shedding like old skins, bodies mapping each other with the urgency of the withheld. Lydia's touch was reverent, exploring the freckles across Lucy's shoulders, whispering affirmations between kisses. For Lucy, it was salvation. The stuck places melting under Lydia's warmth, her own hands learning the dip of Lydia's waist, the strength in her thighs. Mornings after blurred into a secret rhythm. Stolen weekends hiking Forest Park, where mist clung to ferns and they made love in a hidden grove. Laughter echoing off mossy trunks. Lydia cooked pozole from her abuela's recipe, spicy and soul-soothing, while Lucy played guitar on the fire escape, strumming covers of Phoebe Bridgers. They talked dreams, Lucy's gallery show someday, Lydia's book on queer resilience. But shadows crept in. Lydia grew distant after calls from an ex, Elena, whose name slipped out once in sleep. Lucy pushed it down, chalking it up to old wounds. But the texts piled up on Lydia's phone, unread but insistent. Winter gripped Portland, holiday lights twinkling against slushy streets. Their first fight erupted over nothing. A cancelled session for Lydia's family emergency, which turned out to be drinks with Elena at a Nob Hill bar. Lucy confronted her in the snow-dusted courtyard, voice raw. "Am I just a rebound? Or are you still guiding her through your mess?" Lydia recoiled, eyes flashing hurt. "It's not like that. Elena's struggling. And I can't turn away from someone in pain." The words landed like slaps, echoing Lucy's own fragility. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her, leaving Lydia alone with the echo. The betrayal festered. Lucy dove into work, her designs sharper, edgier, channeling the ache into pixels. Friends at the queer open mic nights noticed, pulling her into hugs that smelled of patchouli and IPA. But nights alone in her apartment, rain pattering the window, She replayed the moments, Lydia's laugh fading into doubt. One evening, scrolling Instagram, she saw it, a photo of Lydia and Elena at a holiday market. Arms linked. Smiles too easy. The caption, "Old flames. New sparks," gutted her. Tears came hot and furious, soaking her pillow as she curled into the fetal position. The compass rose tattoo flashing in her mind like a mocking sigil. Lydia's texts flooded in, apologies. Explanations. Please to talk. It was closure. Luce. Nothing more. Please. But Lucy ghosted. The silence her armor. Crisis peaked on New Year's Eve. Portland's fireworks bursting over the river like shattered glass. Lucy wandered the waterfront alone. Bottle of cheap Prosecco in hand. The crowd's cheers mocking her isolation. She thought of jumping. Not literally. But emotionally. Letting go of the woman who'd cracked her open only to leave her bleeding. Her phone buzzed. Lydia's voice note cutting through. "I messed up. I confessed everything to her tonight. Told her about you. Us. It's over for good. I need you to know I'm all in. If you'll have me." Lucy listened on a bench. Wind whipping her hair. The pyrotechnics reflecting in her wet eyes. Healing didn't rush in like a hero, it trickled. Tentative. They met at a quiet diner on Division Street. Vinyl booths cracked with age. Coffee steaming between them. Lydia looked wrecked. Dark circles under her eyes. Curls pulled into a messy bun. "I was scared," she admitted. Voice thick. "Of how much you mean? How fast it got real." Elena was safe. Familiar pain. "But you're the future I want." Lucy reached across. Fingers lacing with hers. The touch grounding. It hurt like hell. "But I see you trying." Rebuilding was messy. Therapy for both now. Separate and shared. Lydia stepped back from the coach-client dynamic. Referring Lucy to a colleague. Their love no longer tangled in power. Spring thawed the city. Cherry blossoms dusting the parks like confetti. They volunteered together at the center. Holding space for others' stories. Learning that love's true guidance comes from mutual vulnerability. One afternoon in Washington Park. Under a sky vast and forgiving. Lucy sketched Lydia's profile. The curve of her smile eternal on paper. "I thought I needed fixing," Lucy said. Pencil pausing. "Turns out. I needed you to remind me I'm whole." Lydia turned. Eyes shining. And pulled her close. Their foreheads touching amid the bloom-scented air. In that moment, amid the everyday hum of joggers and distant traffic, they found the humanistic truth: love isn't a straight path or a flawless confession. It's the willingness to confess again. To heal the betrayals. To choose each other through the storms. Portland stretched before them. Resilient and raw. A canvas for their unfolding. And as the sun dipped low, painting the world gold, Lucy knew she'd found not just guidance, but home. The fragility of their truce tested early. Like a bridge swaying in the wind. Lucy woke to Lydia's side of the bed empty more mornings than not. The sheets cool where her warmth should be. Lydia threw herself into the center's crisis hotline. Nights blurring into dawn with calls from desperate voices. Her empathy a double-edged sword. "I have to give what I can," she'd say. Collapsing beside Lucy with exhausted kisses. But the distance gnawed. Lucy understood. Intellectually. The pull of helping others heal when your own scars itched. Yet emotionally. It echoed too closely the voids Jess had left. The way love could slip through fingers like Willamette silt. They navigated it with brutal honesty. Weekly check-ins over takeout from the food carts on 12th and Stark. Steam rising from cartons of pad thai and falafel wraps. Scale of 1 to 10. "How's the trust today?" Lydia would ask. Her fork pausing mid-air. Brown eyes searching. Lucy learned to voice the 7-point wobbles. The fears that Elena's shadow might linger in Lydia's unlocked phone. In turn, Lydia confessed her terror of abandonment. Rooted in a childhood of her mother's revolving door of partners. Each leaving craters in their Echo Park bungalow. "You're the first who makes me believe in steady," she'd whisper. And Lucy would hold her. Tracing the compass tattoo. A reminder that directions could realign. Summer unfurled. Lazy and luminous. The city pulsing with food truck festivals and outdoor yoga in the parks. Their bond deepened in stolen pockets, a road trip to the Oregon coast. where they chased waves at Cannon Beach. Salt spray tangling their hair. Lydia's laughter freer than Lucy had ever heard. They made a bonfire on the sand, roasting marshmallows until they charred black, feeding each other bites while stars pricked the velvet sky. That night, in a driftwood cabin rented on Airbnb, love unfolded slow and sacred. Bodies entwined under quilts that smelled of sea and smoke. Lydia's hands mapped Lucy's curves with worship, murmuring, "You're my north," against her skin. And Lucy arched into it. The crisis of winter dissolving in waves of release. Back in Portland, life wove them tighter. Lucy's designs caught fire. A mural commission for the bookstore turning heads at first Thursday art walks. Her name whispered in galleries along the waterfront. Lydia celebrated with a surprise picnic in Laurelhurst Park. Basket brimming with cheeses from Cheese Bar and strawberries from the farmer's market. A playlist of Brandi Carlile crooning from a portable speaker. They lay on the blanket, heads pillowed on each other's laps, watching ducks glide the lagoon. "This is us," Lydia said, fingers combing through Lucy's auburn waves. Not perfect, but real. Lucy believed it then. The humanistic glow of chosen family warming her bones. Yet conflict brewed beneath the idol. Insidious as summer humidity. Lydia's ex, Elena, resurfaced not with malice but necessity, a shared lease on a storage unit in Beaverton. Forgotten boxes of Lydia's life cluttering Elena's garage. "Just one afternoon," Lydia promised, kissing Lucy's forehead before heading out. Hours stretched into evening. Lucy pacing her studio apartment, the tick of her wall clock amplifying doubts. When Lydia returned, disheveled and distant, smelling faintly of Elena's citrus perfume, the air crackled. "What happened?" Lucy demanded, arms crossed over her tank top, heart hammering. "Nothing," Lydia insisted. But her eyes darted. "The lie flimsiest tissue." It spilled then. That nothing, a hug that lingered. Old jokes that sparked too easily. Elena's hand on Lydia's arm as she said, "You look happy. She must be good for you." But the touch had stirred embers. A flicker of what was. And Lydia hadn't pulled away fast enough. Lucy's world tilted. Betrayal's second strike sharper for its familiarity. "You're confessing to ghosts again," she accused. Voice breaking. Tears hot on her cheeks. Lydia reached. But Lucy recoiled. Grabbing her keys. "I can't be your safe harbor if you're sailing back to her storms." She fled to a friend's couch in Selwood. The night alive with crickets and distant trains rumbling over the bridge. Sleep evaded. Memories crashing like breakers, Lydia's vulnerability in their first kiss. The way she'd shattered under Lucy's touch. By dawn, resolve hardened. She drafted the email to her gallery contact. Pulling out of a joint show with Lydia's encouragement. Reclaiming her art as solo armor. Days blurred into a haze of sketches and solitude. Lucy haunting coffee shops like Heart Coffee Roasters, where baristas knew her order by heart, black with a cinnamon dust. No foam. Lydia's pursuit was relentless yet respectful. Flowers left on Lucy's doorstep, dahlias in mason jars. Notes tucked in, "I'm learning to let go." For us. Group therapy at the center, forced proximity, awkward nods across the circle. Eyes avoiding until one night. After a session on forgiveness, Lydia cornered her in the hallway. "I sabotaged us because I don't deserve this," she confessed. Voice raw. Tears carving tracks down her olive cheeks. "But losing you. It's teaching me I do." Lucy's walls trembled. The emotional crisis peaking in a flood of sobs. Arms wrapping around Lydia as they sank to the floor. The linoleum cool against their skin. Healing's path wound crooked. Therapy sessions dissecting the patterns, Lydia's savior complex. Lucy's fear of invisibility. They dated anew. Tentative as spring shoots. No grand gestures but small truths. A walk along the East Bank Esplanade at twilight. Hands brushing until they clasped. The steel bridge lights winking like approvals. Lydia deleted Elena's number in front of Lucy. The act symbolic. A vow etched in pixels. Lucy shared her journals. Pages filled with doubts turned to affirmations. Vulnerability her new strength. Autumn returned. Leaves crunching underfoot in Irving Park, where they spread a quilt for their 6-month recommitment. Cider steaming from thermoses. Apple slices dipped in caramel. Lydia pulled a small box from her jacket. Inside, matching pendants, tiny compasses. Silver and simple. Guidance isn't one way, she said, fastening Lucy's around her neck. The chain cool against her collarbone. It's us. Pointing each other home. Lucy kissed her then. Deep and sure. The taste of fall on their lips. Knowing the betrayals had forged something unbreakable. In the quiet aftermath, they built rituals, Sunday markets at PSU. Haggling over handmade soap scented with lavender and eucalyptus. Laughter bubbling as they sampled tamales from vendors with stories as rich as the masa. Lydia's book took shape. Chapters on queer love's resilience penned at the kitchen table. Lucy reading drafts aloud. Her voice infusing life. Lucy's solo exhibit opened in a Pearl District loft. Walls alive with her visions, abstract swirls of color evoking emotional tides. Lydia's portrait central. Eyes capturing that first vulnerable spark. The humanistic core emerged in the ordinary, holding space for each other's shadows. Choosing growth over escape. One evening, rain lashing the windows again. They curled on the couch. A rerun of the L Word flickering on the TV. Half-watched. Lydia's head on Lucy's shoulder. Fingers intertwined. I confessed more than planned that first day, Lucy murmured. Echoing the title of their story. But every word led here. Lydia smiled. Sleep soft. And here is enough. Winter's grip loosened into a tentative spring. But the real thaw was internal. Slow as sap rising in maples lining the streets of Montevilla. Lucy and Lydia's recommitment held. But fractures lingered. Hairline cracks from the second betrayal that widened under pressure. Lydia's hotline shifts intensified with a surge in calls, the city's underbelly churning with layoffs at tech startups downtown. Queer youth couchsurfing in the shadows of affluent neighborhoods. She came home hollow-eyed. Collapsing into bed without supper. Her empathy a voracious beast devouring their intimacy. Lucy adapted at first. Leaving post-it notes on the fridge, proud of you. Thai leftovers warming. But resentment simmered. Bubbling up in passive silences during their walks along the Springwater Corridor Trail. Where blackberries tangled the fences and the Willamette murmured secrets. I feel like I'm dating your job, Lucy finally voiced one dusk. Gravel crunching under their sneakers. The air thick with pollen. Lydia stopped. Turning with a sigh that carried the weight of unspoken exhaustion. It's not just a job. Luce. These calls. They're me. Keeping the darkness at bay. The word stung. Implying Lucy's understanding fell short. And she walked the rest home alone. The trail's lamps flickering like dying fireflies. The emotional crisis crested unexpectedly. A storm front rolling in from the coast. Lydia's mother, Rosa, called from LA, a fall. A hospital bed. The frail voice cracking over the line about needing her girl. Lydia flew south the next day. Tickets booked in a panic. Leaving Lucy with a hurried kiss at the airport. Portland International's glass walls echoing goodbyes. 2 weeks max, she promised. Boarding with a duffel stuffed with hoodies and unresolved tension. Lucy waved from the curb. Ubers honking around her. But inside. Dread coiled like barbed wire. Solitude amplified the voids. Lucy threw herself into a new project. Illustrating a graphic novel for a local indie press about queer witches in the Pacific Northwest. Her tablet glowing late into nights scented with microwave popcorn and isolation. Friends rallied, game nights at the brewpub in St. John's, where IPAs flowed and cornhole games dissolved into tipsy confessions. But texts from Lydia grew sporadic, Mom's stable. But weak. Miss you. Then silence. Days stretching into a week. Panic clawed Lucy's throat, visions of Elena's citrus ghost resurfacing in the crisis. Lydia's arms opening for comfort's sake. The breaking point arrived via a late-night email. Forwarded from the center, a newsletter praising Lydia's inspirational talk at a LA support group. Photo attached. There she was. Radiant under stage lights. Elena beside her on the panel. Hands clasped in solidarity. Captions gushing about reunited allies. Lucy's vision blurred. The screen swimming as sobs racked her frame. Betrayal's third iteration. Not physical but spectral. Elena woven back into Lydia's narrative as savior. Not specter. She packed a bag that night. Crashing at her brother's in Beaverton. The suburbs quiet a bomb in a cage. Lydia returned to an empty apartment. The air stale with abandonment. Her frantic calls went to voicemail. Lucy's profile picture staring back accusingly. Desperation drove her to the bookstore, where Lucy's murals bloomed on the walls, vibrant yet haunted. She waited in the poetry section, spine rigid against the shelves of Audre Lorde and Ocean Vuong. Until closing. Lucy emerged. Keys jingling. Eyes hardening at the sight. "Not here," she said. Voice steel-wrapped hurt. But Lydia followed to the alley. Rain starting in fat drops. "I didn't know she'd be there," Lydia pleaded. Curls plastered to her forehead. Olive skin pale under the sodium glow. "Mom's group." Elena volunteers. "It was professional." "Luce. I swear." Lucy laughed. Bitter and broken. Leaning against the brick. "Professional like the hug? The hand-holding? You're a magnet for her orbit. And I'm the fool circling." The words eviscerated. Lydia crumpling. Knees buckling to the wet pavement. "I hate this pull. She's chaos. But familiar. You're the light I keep dimming by mistake." Lucy knelt then. Despite the rage. Hands cupping Lydia's face. Thumbs brushing tears. "I can't keep rebuilding from your ashes. Lie. It's killing the parts of me you first saw." They stayed there until the downpour soaked them through. Confessions pouring freer than the rain, Lydia's fear of her mother's decline mirroring her own. Elena a crutch in the grief, Lucy's terror of perpetual second place. Her art thriving yet her heart starving. Dawn crept. Gray and forgiving. As they rose. Arms linked. Trudging to Lydia's car parked blocks away. Healing demanded amputation of old ties. Lydia blocked Elena. Not with fanfare but finality. The click echoing in their quiet loft. Joint therapy shifted to a new counselor in the Alphabet District. Sessions dissecting codependency's roots, Lydia's from immigrant grit. Always giving to prove worth, Lucy's from Midwestern stoicism. Swallowing needs to avoid burden. They crafted boundaries. Non-negotiable as Portland's food cart pods, no X-contact. Shared calendars color-coded. Weekly nights sans phones. Devoted to massages and Merlot-fueled truths. Summer bloomed triumphant. A phoenix season. They escaped to a cabin near Mt. Hood. Pine-scented air and crackling firesides where stories flowed unfiltered. Lydia read from her manuscript. Voice steady. Lucy illustrating chapter headers with ethereal inks, women entwined in forests. Symbols of intertwined fates. One evening. Stars wheeling overhead. They hiked to a meadow. Wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Lydia dropped to one knee. Not with a ring but a vow, a handwritten letter. Sealed with wax. Promising to confess fears before they fester. To choose us in every shadow. Lucy's response was a tackle hug. Laughter mingling with tears. Their bodies tumbling into the grass. Love reclaiming territory. Back in the city. The humanistic layers peeled back to reveal grace. Lucy's graphic novel launched at Powell's. A line snaking the block. Lydia beaming from the front row. Her pride a tangible force. They mentored at the center. Tag-teaming workshops on healthy attachments. Their scars badges of authenticity. Friends toasted their resilience at backyard barbecues in Hosford Abernethy. Grills smoking with veggie burgers and stories swapped under string lights. Yet depth demanded ongoing vigilance. A scare came in fall. Lydia's mom worsening. Pulling her south again. This time, Lucy went too. Hand in hers through sterile halls and tear-streaked vigils. Rosa, frail in her bed, gripped Lucy's fingers, whispering in Spanglish. "You keep my Lydia anchored. Mia." The vigil ended in quiet release. Rosa passing at dawn. The LA sun gilding the room. Grief bonded them deeper. Funerals blending with healing hikes in Griffith Park. Where eucalyptus whispered condolences. Winter circled back. But softer. Laced with light. They decorated the loft with fairy lights and a tree scavenged from a lot on Burnside. Ornaments handmade from therapy affirmations. One snow-dusted night. Curled by the fire. Lucy traced Lydia's tattoo. "Guidance led me to you. But staying. That's our confession." Lydia smiled. Eyes reflecting flames. "And it's the one worth every unplanned word." Grief's tendrils lingered through the holidays. A quiet undercurrent in Portland's festive bustle. Lydia moved through days like a ghost in her own skin. The loft echoing with Rose's absence, empty corners where her laughter once filled voice notes. Recipes scrawled on faded index cards now tucked in a memory box. Lucy anchored her. Brewing cafecito strong and black. The way Rosa taught. Steam curling like prayers. They scattered ashes on a crisp January morning at Multnomah Falls. The cascade thundering benediction. Lydia's sobs muffled against Lucy's wool coat. The mist beating their lashes like unshed tears. Healing's arc bent toward renewal. But not without fresh tempests. Spring brought a job offer for Lydia, a full-time director role at a larger LGBTQ nonprofit in San Francisco. Salary doubling. Impact tripling. The email arrived over breakfast at screen door. Waffles golden and syrup sticky. Lydia's fork pausing mid-bite. It's a chance to scale what I do here, she said. Excitement warring with dread in her brown eyes. Lucy's stomach knotted around the bacon. Visions of cross-state weekends fracturing their woven life. SF's just a drive, Lydia added quickly. But the distance loomed. A chasm wider than I-5's lanes. Conflict ignited in the weeks following. Arguments flaring like summer brush fires. Lucy, deep in revisions for her graphic novel's sequel, felt the pull of her own ambitions, a residency in Brooklyn whispering through agent calls. Tempting with East Coast galleries and queer scenes pulsing with possibility. Why chase shadows when we have this? Lydia countered during a heated exchange in the kitchen. Pots clanging as she stirred arroz con gandals. A comfort dish turned tense. Because staying small feels like settling, Lucy shot back. Hoodie sleeves pushed up. Freckles stark against flushed skin. The words hung. Betraying the fear beneath, that love might demand sacrifice. One yielding dreams for the other's harbor. The crisis peaked in May. Under skies heavy with promise and peril. Lydia accepted the SF job. Start date looming like a guillotine. Lucy, stung, applied for the Brooklyn residency in a fit of defiance. The confirmation email a Pyrrhic victory. They circled each other warily. Intimacy reduced to perfunctory touches. The bed a contested terrain. One night, after a silent dinner of takeout pho from a cart on Sandy Boulevard, the dam broke. Lydia hurled the accusation first. You're punishing me for choosing growth. Just like I punished you with Elena. Lucy recoiled. Tears springing hot. And you're running to prove you're needed elsewhere? Leaving me to hold our home alone. Words escalated. Confessions clawing free, Lydia's terror of stagnation. Echoing Rose's warnings about settling for less than fire, Lucy's dread of abandonment. Rooted in Jess's flight and now this geographic ghost. They collapsed onto the rug. Exhausted. Backs against the couch. Hands finding each other in the dim. I need you, Lydia whispered. Voice splintered. But not at the cost of your light. Lucy turned. Forehead to hers. Then we redefine home. No ultimatums. Just us plotting the map together. Resolution bloomed from that rubble. A humanistic pact forged in vulnerability. They negotiated, Lydia deferred SF for a year. Negotiating remote hybrids, Lucy tabled Brooklyn. Opting for a Portland-based fellowship that toured regionally. Boundaries evolved into bridges, monthly retreats to wine country in the Willamette Valley. Where vineyard rows stretched like veins of possibility. Tastings loosening tongues for dream weaving. They co-authored a workshop series at the center. Love's Long Game, drawing crowds from Seattle to Eugene. Their story anonymized but resonant. Emphasizing that true partnership thrives on mutual flight. Not clipped wings. Summer deepened their roots. A garden plot in a community space near the Hollywood district yielded tomatoes ruby and ripe. Basil perfuming the air as they harvested at dusk. Dirt under nails a tactile therapy. Lucy's sequel launched to acclaim. Panels at Wordstock featuring her and Lydia tag-teaming Q&A. The audience's nods a chorus of recognition. Lydia's book deal solidified. Manuscript swelling with chapters on grief's alchemy. Illustrated by Lucy's ethereal lines, compasses morphing into intertwined roots. Autumn's palette painted their commitment ceremony. Intimate under oaks in Tryon Creek State Park. A clearing ringed by ferns. No officiant. Just friends in a circle, rings exchanged were etched bands. Simple silver with inscribed coordinates of their first kiss site. Vows poured unscripted, Lydia's promise to confess wanderlust before it wanders, Lucy's to guide without gripping. Loving your horizons as my own. Laughter mingled with sniffles. Toasts raised with elderflower spritzes. The air alive with fireflies and fiddles from a busker's bow. Winter wrapped them in quiet profundity. Snow blanketing the city in hush. They volunteered at a holiday drive for unhoused queer youth. Sorting donations in a warehouse off MLK. Stories shared over cocoa steaming in thermoses. One boy, 17 and fierce, clutched a donated sketch pad. Eyes lighting as Lucy demoed shading techniques. Lydia watched. Pride swelling. Later whispering. This is the guidance we give now, ripples from our storms. The ending unfolded not in grand finale but sustained grace. A life layered with the ordinary sacred. Mornings dawned with coffee shared on the fire escape. Portland's skyline hazy with promise. Evenings ended in tangled sheets. Breaths sinking like tides. Betrayals transmuted to wisdom. Crises to compassion. Their love a testament, in modern America's churn of ambition and ache. Healing lies in relentless choosing. Confessions evolving from unplanned spills to deliberate anthems. Years hence. Gray threading their curls. They'd recounted over diner pie in some roadside stop. Hands wrinkled but clasped. You needed guidance, Lydia would say. Fork spearing cherry filling. And I confessed a lifetime. Lucy, smiling across the formica, would reply. Best detour ever. In that, the profound truth, love's arc bends toward wholeness. Not perfection. A humanistic hymn sung in the key of us.